fire for your mind. The Kosher Clinician.
Relationships thrive when women have irrational fears about masculinity and leadership. Is there evidence that black men have the power to oppress women at all levels of governance? Have the man versus bear argument been based in projection of irrational fear because they want power?
I wouldn't concede to that because they make this, they paint this thing where the men were just that the men. I'm sorry, Saint, but I'm gonna just say this. They paint this thing where the men was just treating women all bad.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's crazy to me. That's not what it was, and it did go to the point of survivalism. At the end of the day, it does change. Because when you were trying to compare them those days back then to the days now, you can't compare them now because we are lost. Women are lost. And guess who else is lost? Their children are lost because there's nobody to teach the children how to become conducive adults.
Being able to make wages and secure individual stability. So now that you're able to do that, you can leave without the blink, whenever you feel like you mistreated, you're gone. And what she's exposed me to something that I discovered this year. These are things that I've been discovering, man. I'm discovering a whole bunch of stuff. I had a mental block in front of me. I had an ideological block that wasn't allowing me to see other sides of this argument. And once I start tapping to it, I started understanding it. It is true that the reason why a lot of these women are eager to leave is because they do not have to rely on you for financial stability.
I disagree.
Where did that? So let me ask you this then: where did that evolve from? From how many years that was? Give me the time a year where there was times when women just wasn't making money and man was making all the women. And I'm gonna say this, specifically black men, where women were broke as hell and they had to stay with a man because the women wasn't making no damn money. Give me the time frame that was.
I can go as early as the 80s.
Nope.
Early.
Let me tell you something. Hold on. Let me tell you something.
Nick, you got to mute. I'm gonna let you for your background loud. When he gets on,
have to agree with it, but
When men fail to lead, the children rebel and the women take over.
In situations that may not have been the best situations for survival. Absolutely. They were not making the money in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s to carry a household on their own, especially if you had 5, 6, 8, 10 kids. Where were you going and you made $300 a year? Okay.
that the man. I'm sorry, Saint, but I'm gonna just say this. They paint this thing where the man was just treating women all bad.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's crazy to me. That's not what it was, and it did go to the point of survivalists. At the end of the day, it does change. Because when you trying to compare those days back then to the days now, you can't compare them now because we are lost. Women are lost. And guess who else is lost? Their children are lost because there's nobody to teach the children how to become conducive adults.
Is there a concern about, well, in the instance where either the bear or the man is aggressive, yes, the bear will kill you, but the man could do worse? Is that kind of also a component?
Yeah, I would rather be slaughtered than raped, so.
Gotcha,
Oof.
yeah. And I think that that's a fair conclusion. Yeah. In terms of how you want to go out, I don't object to that. I guess my confusion here a little bit is the risk profile of a given encounter with a bear versus a given encounter with a man. So given that you've made a determination that you'd rather pick bear over man, I guess what percentage of men do you think would be inclined to victimize you in that way?
Greetings. This is another topic of the Kosher Clinician that might be sensitive to some viewers. If you are sensitive to the topic at hand or the title provided in the show, please proceed with caution. You have been warned. Viewer discretion is advised. Hit that like button and share this stream if you're not a beta male. Fire for your mind. The Kosher Clinician.
If it ain't seven, it ain't kosher. Heaven and hell, that's what they told you. Real men put the strap down and we can toss them. Young heads picking back up and young dolphins. This is our culture. Now we talking kosher. Clinician, masculinity issues, absent fathers who miss you, mama drama don't kiss you, all a part of the ritual, this is how they get you, separate the men, women clipping babies pretend to, damn, lovers, haters acting like vultures, if it ain't seven, it ain't kosher, if it ain't kosher, ain't right, gotta divorce us, if it ain't seven, it ain't kosher, if it ain't kosher, ain't right, gotta divorce us, if it ain't seven, it ain't kosher, if it ain't kosher, ain't right, gotta divorce us. This is Kosher Condition. 7 wonders, the whole world gotta listen. This is Kosher Condition. 7 wonders, the whole world gotta listen. This is Kosher Condition. 7 wonders, the whole world gotta listen. This is Kosher Condition. 7 wonders, the whole world gotta listen. Listen.
All right, guys, we're going to get into it, man. Thank you guys for tuning in on tonight. 15 minutes after the hour, 6 o'clock, guys, we're going to have a powerful show. And we're going to talk about the pathologies, guys, associated with modern dating and relationships as it relates to why does dating feel so dangerous in 2026? Why does dating feel so dangerous? There's a concept, guys, I'm going to teach you guys about called it's called transgenerational trauma. But not only is it called transgenerational trauma, there's another concept that I created called schema afflictions, and one that parrot that is called paranoid persecution. And so many times the things that I see in dating and relationships, guys, you will be surprised at what I see in dating, but also what I see in couples counseling. There are a lot of women and some men that come into relationships and they are transmitting trauma from their prior relationships, or they're living vicariously due to trauma of their grandmothers or their mothers. And the old trope that a lot of men struggle with as it relates to dating and relationships is the presumption and the assumption that men persecuted them. It's this crazy notion that men persecuted them. Men are dangerous. Men are harmful. And that's nothing further from the truth. And many times, God, is tied into the color purple narrative. And many times I call it a concept that many didn't go through, but they live vicariously through the trauma of their mothers or their grandmothers or their great-grandmothers. And they do this broad, oversweeping generalization about men, and they make these false narratives and false tropes that men are inherently dangerous. And see, the fallacy to this kind of thinking is that it's an irrational fear, because if you wanted to equivocate a bear to that of a man, then you're going to think about a bear and a man being in an environment simultaneously. But this irrational fear that some women have about men and men being predatory and the bear being more safe is that the fallacy is that, or the logical fallacy is that men, women, and bears are not in the same environment simultaneously. While there are men in environments with women, men are not in mass hurting women. And so this paranoid persecution or these schemas that are not based in reality, a lot of times when women go into relationships, they want a partnership because many times they don't feel comfortable because they're living through the trauma of their grandmothers or great-grandmothers. But in reality, the men that they are accosting had nothing to do with it. And that's why dating feels dangerous. Let me tell you guys something. I had a situation with a young man in couples therapy. And one of the things that the person said to me, which I found to be very perplexing and foolish at the same time, he wants to be intimate with his wife. And in the process of trying to be intimate with his wife, he said he had needs. He talked about his physiological needs. He talked about his needs as a husband. And in these relationships now, guys, if a man say he want to be intimate with his wife, she'll say unanimously that he's being misogynistic. Can you imagine a time in this world that when you want to be intimate with your wife, and if you can't get intimacy, then it's misogyny? I mean, it's bizarre. But yet, these same people expect you as a man to still provide for them, protect them, and give them traditional virtues and values. And it's dangerous because, see, to you good men that are listening, and to the good women that are listening, what it does, it keeps the man on the defensive in the relationship. See, modern women now are actually playing reverse psychology with a lot of men, consciously or unconsciously. And so when they play the victim narrative, what it does, it keeps the man always on the defensive. And so if he's constantly on the defensive, the things that were just normal in a relationship, like, cooking for her husband, doing care duties, and taking care of her husband, some of the women just did in general, the man feels afraid and shame, so he shrinks down. And so the traumas that her grandmothers told her about her grandfather and men in general, white or black, now it's this spurious nonsense that men by default are dangerous. And so when a man said, "Can I have intimacy?" she'll say that's misogyny because it's my body and I don't have to give my body to you if I don't want to. And so what you men got to start saying when a bill needs to be paid, when somebody breaks into the house, you tell her that that's Miss Andrew because, we're equal now, and I shouldn't have to pay for any bills. I shouldn't have to do traditional duties that my grandfather or my great-grandfather did. And so dating is dangerous now because a lot of men are playing by rules that are not synonymous to reality. And once again, these irrational fears is based on vicarious trauma. I call it vicarious trauma by proxy. That's just a fancy term of saying that the traumas of their grandparents or great-grandparents have been broadly and falsely equivocated to all men. And so they always see men in the lens of negativity and danger, and just still see men in reality. And so when you hear women making these stupid statements about, "I trust the bear," that's a false equivalency. Because the bears and men don't live in the same environment simultaneously. And most men are good men. Are there predatory men? Yes. But there are also equally predatory women. And so men are constantly being on the defensive about relationships and their rightful role in the relationship because they are afraid how that woman might respond. And so it's a power dynamic. And it's a power dynamic, guys, that's many times predicated in what's called an insecure attachment style. So they go into relationships emotionally unavailable, which in essence lead to an immature attachment style. Do me a favor, guys, if you like what I'm doing, share this stream to 5 or 6 like-minded people. Once you share the stream, hit once, share with like-minded people. And if you like what I'm doing, donate to the channel because these shows do take a lot of time to put together. And I am a licensed therapist, and putting these shows together takes a lot of editing and clipping, and it's very time consuming. So if you like what I'm doing and what I'm trying to convey for traditional minded men and women, please donate to the channel because we're living in a world, guys, where truth is stranger than fiction. And so once again, this paranoid persecution is based on insecurities. And these insecurities are many times have led to women being very rigid. And it's made men rigid because they don't know how to act. Because this is the first time in human history where men have been assailed as being dangerous or from a broad stroke. And anytime they come into a relationship, she's talking about what grandmama went through, but yet no woman have lived through what her grandmama lived through. So some boomer women taught their daughters wrong, and some of the boomer fathers, because they taught them to be totally self-sufficient without being interdependent. You can't have a healthy relationship not being willing to be vulnerable in that said relationship. And that's why a lot of relationships are so fragile and broken because she's already coming in seeing the man as the predator, and therefore the man is always on the defense trying to assuage her, and she used these liberal indoctrinated talking points that the man is dangerous. And so this is what we call paranoid persecution, once again, or schema afflictions or core beliefs that are not based in reality. And so you men cannot allow yourself to get caught up in this nonsense. Because if you look at it on the spiritual level, it's witchcraft. It's nothing but it's witchcraft. I call it hoecraft, but it's witchcraft. That's what it is in a nutshell. It is witchcraft. And many times these ideologies, whether it be very raw or not, is fed through what's called feminist theory, and many times it's fed through what's called the Duluth model. And you guys have to be very careful, and you need to know what your standards are, because I talk to men every day that are suffering. And to a lot of people that are ignorant, they always assume that red pill means hate women. No, red pill just means I see things how it is. I need to plan accordingly before I give my power away. Because all relationships are about power. And if you're dealing with a broken woman that see things through the lens of victimization, then that's dangerous. Because you cannot build a healthy relationship based on illogical, irrational based fear. So I saw I can't think of the guy's name, Black Man Unfiltered, shout out to him. And I wanted to talk about this, guys, because one of the fallacies in modern dating and relationships that you hear said all the time is the presupposition that men en masse, especially black men, you hear them saying that black men oppressed them and black men had this patriarchy. But you can't have a pure patriarchy without power. Black men never had power. We had ideals that were transmitted into traditionalism, but black men en masse never had power because black men and black women were working together in the South as mules of burden, and we were working together. We had no other choice but to work together because we were all victims of Jim Crow racism. But these tired talking points and these tired tropes, they're very dangerous because they're not only dangerous because the woman see men in the negative light, which in essence is impacting her ability to have a healthy relationship, but it's dangerous because the man is always in a state of him being the predator. And that's why I'm an advocate of passport bros, because there are saboteurs that speak out of ignorance concerning what a passport bro is, not understanding that passport bros is not one ideology. It's a loose ideology with men from different backgrounds, with men with different proclivities, with men with different worldviews. If you look at passport bros on a bell curve, are there deviants in passport bros? Sure, there are deviants in all groups. But would I say that the average passport bro, a guy that travels, is a decent man? Yes. Some are computer guys, some are looking for wives, some are just going to travel, some are going to have fun. But it's dangerous dating women that think like this, because what it does, guys, it takes away your masculinity. It kills your drive, it kills your testosterone levels. And you're in a relationship where you're constantly on edge and walking on eggshells and being afraid of being called a misogynist. And that's dangerous because it's not based in reality. It's based in illusions or delusions, because there's no evidence. As a therapist, we use concepts called collaborative empiricism. And that's just a fancy way of saying, let's look at the evidence and examine it. And once we look at the evidence, then we determine the verdict. And so you got a lot of men that are just, twirling their thumbs. They're getting caught up in this quagmire where they're constantly trying to please their woman or their wives or their girlfriends based on irrational fear. And it's dangerous because these tired narratives, guys, are causing not only relationship entropy, but also what it's doing, guys, it's damaging men's ability to act in a way where they feel safe and where they feel competent as men. And that's why it's so dangerous. And so we're going to get into it. Shout out to Black Men Unfiltered. And then we're going to look at the evidence from the past. But once again, guys, if you like what I'm doing, donate to the channel. Hit the like button. And shout out to everybody that are listening. And we're going to get deep into it. We're going to get deep into it, guys. So let me show you guys something. I'm going to show you guys something real quick. Let's go back and look at this clip real fast. And then we'll get into it. Hold tight.
Relationships thrive when women have irrational fears about masculinity and leadership. Is there evidence that Black men had the power to oppress women at all levels of governance? Have the man versus bear argument been based in projection of irrational fear because they want power?
I wouldn't concede to that, because they make this, they paint this thing where the men were just that the men. I'm sorry, Saint, but I'm gonna just say this. They paint this thing where the man was just treating women all bad.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's crazy.
And it is crazy and it is dangerous, but that's what a lot believe. A lot of women see men as dangerous. They see all men as dangerous. But when you look at the evidence, there's no evidence to say that men on average are dangerous people. It's no evidence. But they buy into these false narratives because part of it is a dysregulated nervous system, but also part of it is due to liberal indoctrination. And some of it is unresolved trauma, but sociologically, a lot of it is living vicariously due to trauma of their mothers. And that's why this kind of thinking is so dangerous.
To me, that's not what it was. And it did go to the point of survivalist. At the end of the day, it does change. Because when you trying to compare them those days back then to the days now, you can't compare them now because we are lost. Women are lost. And guess who else is lost? Their children are lost because there's nobody to teach the children how to become conducive adults.
Being able to make wages and secure individual stability. So now that you're able to do that, you can leave without the.
So do you guys feel that there is evidence? Do you guys feel like there's evidence that men in mass are being dangerous towards women and hurting women? Think about that. Shout out to Eugene Steele. It's been a minute, sir. He said, when one thinks of a bear, one thinks about God's most aggressive, most ferocious, strongest, and powerful creation. I totally agree. And when women compare a man to a bear, no man is as powerful as a bear. But this is what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that if women rarely come in contact with a bear, but they come in contact with men all the time. But it's a logical fallacy because you can't use that, because you got to use it from a perspective where men and bears are in environments simultaneously. And if you use that argument, then if you want to say that you're afraid of men, then let that be known. But we know that men are not dangerous as bears, and men in mass are not as dangerous as bears. Are there dangerous men like there are dangerous women? Yes. But that's a person that has what's called a dysregulated nervous system. And you got to run away from women like that, guys. Because women like that are highly dangerous. And you don't want to be in no relationship when you're dealing with a woman that's foolish and she's talking about a bear, and she'll rather be around the bear. You don't want to be around that. Hold tight.
Blink whenever you feel like you mistreated, you're gone. And what she's exposed me to something that I discovered this year. These are things that I've been discovering, man. I'm discovering a whole bunch.
Shout out to the Quiet Storm.
I had a mental block in front of me. I had an ideological block that wasn't allowing me to see other sides of this argument. And once I start tapping to it, I started understanding it. It is true that the reason why a lot of these women are eager to leave is because they do not have to rely on you for financial stability.
So if you notice from these conversations, once again, these trauma narratives, it's always based in irrational fear that men have money and power and status, men oppress women, and women that stay with the men back then because they were oppressed and they men were hurting them, and so they didn't have nowhere to go. And that's not true. It's not based in solid reality. Were there abusive relationships back then? Yes. But see, here's where they don't give men grace. Many don't understand a concept. Shout out to my man Quiet Faith showing love with the $50 holler. And I'm gonna show him some love in a minute. Thank you, sir. That's so generous of you. Thank you 100% Quiet Faith for that $50 super chat. And we're gonna get into it in a minute. But what they don't understand is that when it comes down to male-female dynamics, we don't look at the trauma that men went through in the past and give men the same kind of grace that we give women. I'm gonna explain it to you in a minute. A lot of the traumas that men went through in the past, like the men that abandoned their families, the men that cheated on their wives, the men that had kids outside of marriage, the men that were aggressive towards the women in their life or whatever, they assume that a lot of times those behaviors are a byproduct of what's called genetic predisposition. But that's not true. That's not 100% true. Some of those behaviors were trauma responses. Granddaddy saw grandmama being beat or granddaddy being hung or using words that were deleterious to the psyche of one person. And so when they saw those words, those trauma narratives, many times they didn't have the proper coping mechanisms because therapy was never seen as a alternative for Black people. Many times Asians don't go to therapy or other ethnic groups. Therapy universally has been European. And so they make these false narratives that Black men back then were bad. Black men back then were not taking care of their family. Black men had other families. But watch this. Here's the fallacy with that. If men were making families with other women, then we can equally say that women were complicit in those same behaviors. I know a woman right now that my granddaddy, I think allegedly was knocking down, and she was a married woman. But we'll talk about the malfeasance of granddaddy, but we don't talk about the malfeasance of the woman that knew he was married and she still slept with granddaddy. Were there opportunities or times where men maybe they didn't know that they were married? Perhaps. But a lot of times they did know and they didn't care. So we paint granddaddy as in a negative light, like granddaddy was a Rolling Stone. But we don't talk about many times when granddaddy gave his checks to Big Mama, when granddaddy did all these things for Big Mama. We don't talk about that because it's this pernicious fear that men are inherently bad and men inherently are dangerous, all men. But when you look at the evidence, men routinely put their lives on the line for women and children. Look at the Titanic. The amount of men that put their lives on the line and gave their lives for the cause of women and children. Because this is a natural instinct for men to protect women and children. It's just natural. That's why it's natural for men to do things for their family. It's just natural. But I teach men that you cannot give your valor away without demanding something in return. Because the problem with modern women is that they want the benefits of traditionalism, but they don't want the accountability. They want all the benefits but no accountability. And so these talking points are dangerous because once again, it's not based in reality. It's based in irrational fear. And irrational fear is based in what's called a dystonic ego. There's a syntonic ego, and then there's a dystonic ego. And that dystonic ego doesn't like how it feels. It doesn't like how it feels. And because that ego doesn't like how it feels, then it becomes highly problematic. But not only highly problematic, it becomes highly prejudicial. That Santana ego is not only neurotic, but it's highly irrational. And so when you guys get in a relationship, that's why it's so important for men to get with good women. Because once again, guys, I see it all the time. It's so important for men to get with good women in relationships that are healed, that they are balanced, and they don't have an ideology that's predicated in this liberal nonsense. Because once again, men didn't have power to oppress nobody. Black men did not have power to create a patriarchy to oppress black women, because black men and black women were both mules. I would argue that the average white man did not have power to oppress women. But we can say the rich white oligarchs had power, and those were part of the elite class. But black men in general and average white men didn't have power. Well, there's some white men that benefited because of skin privilege, yes. But in mass, black men did not have power to oppress women, because the pure patriarchy is when men and women, white men and black men come together and create policies and laws at the macro level to tell women what to do. Black men had traditional ideals, but black men never had power, because black men were called boys back then. So how can a boy be a patriarch? How can a man be a patriarch and he's called a boy? But we take these tired trauma narratives through what's called transgenerational trauma, and people keep saying it over and over again. So in their mind, because they've heard it so much, they think it's logical. But not one time do you hear women talk about the good things that black men or those generations did. You don't hear them say that granddaddy was a hardworking farmer, that granddaddy built his house from hand, that granddaddy did X, Y, Z. You don't never hear them talking about the benevolent things that granddad did, because there are a lot of women intrinsically that see men as negative. That's why every time they say something about, even with me being a father, one of my oldest daughters, they don't talk about the good that I've done, but many times that conversation is always predicated in the bad, because they don't see me through the lens of glass half full, but they see me through the lens of glass half empty. And many times that's how women see men. And so when you're dealing with those women are dangerous, because you're not going to be able to have your sovereignty as a man in those said relationships. Your sovereignty as a man should never be compromised to appease a dysregulated woman. That's not a healthy relationship. Because see, Frederick Douglass said it better than me. He said that power never conceded without a struggle. It never have and it never will. And in many of these relationships, it's a power dynamic. She's looking for power from day one. She's looking for power. And then once you say I do, she pulled the mask off. I see it all the time in couples therapy. Men that are fighting for their lives because they're dealing with a dysregulated woman that's basing things based on liberal indoctrination. And so everything they see is through the lens of negativity, what I call confirmation bias. And their dysfunction becomes your normal. And so you're constantly walking around, I'm scared because, can you imagine being in a marriage where you can't have intimacy with your wife and she'll say, just because I'm married, I don't have to give you my body? But then you can say, but just because I'm married, I don't have to give you my service when somebody breaks into the house. Just because I'm married, I don't have to change that tire. Just because I'm married, I don't have to open my wallet, because that's misandry. You're trying to objectify me as a man. See, what you got to start doing, guys, you got to use the same language and reverse it back onto them and make them see how stupid and logical they sound. Because it's not predicated in reality if you look at it from a cognitive model. That's called collaborative empiricism. And that would never be me. I'm not going to be in a relationship where I'm walking on eggshells. If you can't respect me as a man, then you're free to go. If you're damaged, then I'm not going to be with you until you get healed. And I ain't got time to be dealing with you no way, because I'm 54. I got other things to do. I ain't got time to be worrying about your trauma and helping you unpack your trauma. Just like I'm going to expect a woman to unpack my trauma. We can assist one another in our journeys, but I don't expect a woman to unpack my trauma, because that's not my responsibility. And so you got a dysregulated woman to come into a relationship that's broken. And then when you have other good women reverberating the same sentiment, they're called pick-me's and they're called mammies. I got another good show, guys, coming up talking about the negative language of transgenerational trauma. You don't want to be around women like that, because they don't add any value to your life. They are damaged women, and they are broken. Shout out to Quiet Faith for being the #1 sponsor of the stream. He says, thanks for putting together another great discussion, man. I appreciate it. And Brother Quiet Faith, guys, he is the #1 sponsor of this stream, guys. Don't let him be the only one. Shout out to Quiet Faith for being the #1 sponsor.
It's the money.
42 minutes after the hour, 6 o'clock, guys, bringing to you live from the greatest state in the union, the Tar Heel State. Once again, shout out to Quiet Faith being the #1 sponsor. Let's get back into it, guys.
Where did that? So let me ask you this then: where did that evolve from? From how many years that was? Give me the time a year where there was times when women just wasn't making money and man was making all the women. And I'm gonna say this, specifically black men, where women were broke as hell and they had to stay with a man because the women wasn't making no damn money. Give me the time frame that was.
I can go as early as the 80s.
No,
early.
Let me tell you something. Hold on. Let me tell you something.
Hey, Nick, you got to mute. I'm gonna let you for your background loud. When he gets
you don't
on,
have to agree with it, but
because I lived in that time frame.
The 20s, the 30s,
okay, so
40s,
if you did the
50s, the 60s.
Hold on.
Shout out to Ray Johnson for showing love. Shout out to Ray Johnson for sending that cash app. Shout out to Ray Johnson for sending a very generous cash app. Shout out to Ray Johnson and my man Quiet Faith, as they are the #1 sponsors of the stream. Shout out to Quiet Faith, and also shout out to Ray Johnson.
It's the money.
Shout out to Ray Johnson once again for the $30 super chat. I really appreciate it, brother Ray, always supporting the channel. Good friend of mine. Him and I often talk from time to time. Good brother. I'm very generous with his money and his time. And also to the other brother that donated, Brother Quiet Faith. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot. Don't let those guys be the only ones. Let's get back to the conversation, guys, because these trauma narratives are dangerous if you want to be in a healthy relationship.
You got to go that far back.
Hold on.
If you look at the wage gap,
you guys don't know what the hell y'all talking about.
Where did that? So let me ask you this then: where did that evolve from? From how many years that was? Give me the time a year where there was times when women just wasn't making money and man was making all the women. And I'm gonna say this, specifically black men, where women were broke as hell and they had to stay with a man because the women wasn't making no damn money. Give me the time frame that was.
I can go as early as the 80s.
No,
early.
Let me tell you something. Hold on. Let me tell you something.
Hey, Nick, you got to mute. I'm gonna let you for your background loud. When he gets
you
on,
don't have to agree with it, but
because I lived in that time frame.
The 20s, the 30s,
okay, so
40s,
if you did the
50s, the 60s.
Hold on.
So it sounds like the presupposition is that men have exclusive power and exclusive money, and men had all this power and women didn't have any choices, and it's dangerous because it's more nuanced than it is on surface, and that's why these conversations are so dangerous. Men never had exclusive power in relationships unless they were rich. And another tired talking point is that a woman can't rest in her femininity because white women didn't work and black women, well, they try to say that women that rest in their femininity never had to work, but black women have always worked. Most black women in the South worked for white folks, and they worked on the farm with their husbands, and they came home. Working class poor white people did the same thing. But these talking points are dangerous because they're not based in reality, they're based in fear, and they're based in propaganda. And that propaganda many times is seen as facts, and that's dangerous because it's not based in reality.
Hold
you ain't
on.
got to go that far back.
Hold on.
If you look at the wage gap,
You guys don't know what the hell y'all talking about.
talking about black women.
We do know what we grew up during that time. We do know.
I didn't grow up. I'm 67 years old. You guys don't know what
but our grandmother
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
The 80s?
Our grandmothers are older than you are, Kane. Our grandmothers are in their 80s and 90s.
Shout out to my good friend James Turner for the $10 super chat, man. It's been a minute, brother James. Sam Cook says it's been a long time coming. Oh, yes, it is. Shout out to James Turner showing love with that $10 super chat. Thank you, sir. Been a long time, man. Thank you, brother James. Thank you, sir.
They're older than you, so they do know. So they do know. They were there.
The same amount of money as their husband. And the husbands had to work 16 to 20 hours a fucking week to make the money. But the women made money. Women make a choice to stay with
They did not make enough money to carry a household on their own. They did not.
One mic, guys. One mic.
In the 30s.
And you guys see this fallacy. And see, this is the problem that a lot of black men have with black women. They talk black collectivism when it comes down to protection, but they don't talk black collectivism when it comes down to power. Everything is always seen through the lens of their own selfish needs instead of the black collective. That's why, or white men having the same issue. That's why virtuous women are so rare. That's why virtuous women are so rare. It's rare. And men get tired of it. Because what you're hearing from this woman, she's talking about her own needs. But she's not talking about the needs of community. That's why I keep telling these men, y'all got to stop being these relationships where y'all still pledging loyalty to women just for the sake of skin color. Because black people weren't unified in Africa. We were from different countries and different tribes. And they got to stop.
I wasn't back there. I was. Y'all just talking shit from memory. Want to go back to slavery and all that other bullshit.
So you're saying a woman in the 1930s and 40s made enough money to carry a household and 8 children on her own without a husband. Is that what you're saying?
If he's the right guy.
Because you know that's a lie.
No, they did not.
That's a lie.
Coming out of the 80s up into the 90s, middle of second and third wave.
Oh my God.
He left him because the chick called him up and said, "Where's Mike?" And she said, "I'm not taking that shit." And I did that. Carmelo Anthony's wife left him because he got another chick pregnant. He was cheating all the time. But when he crossed that line, it was too much. And I did that. You know, I did that.
So Darwin, hold on. Let's get Darwin. Darwin has something he wanted to say.
Stay with men who
and then
have extra.
We got to get DL in here too.
I was asking you a question about women, though. You asked me a question.
But I was saying it. Let me just say this.
Absolutely right, but
he's right, but you don't exclude the black man. What are y'all talking about? It wasn't like black men was having all this money and the women was like, "Well, I'm just gonna stay with him because he make all the money." That was not how that went. Y'all know It wasn't, especially in the 80s. That's when the crack era was. What are you talking about? Black men and black women were struggling. In the 70s, black men and black women were struggling. In the 60s, they were definitely struggling. And at the end of the day, what it took was a family to take care of one another. That's what it took. This was not a
And God, that's the danger of white liberalism. White liberalism destroyed the fabric of black excellence. Because what they did is a concept called gross exaggeration. In the clinical, we call it a cognitive distortion. It was a minimization of the contributions of men and the magnification of whatever perceived traumas she thought she had. And so what's happening in relationships now, guys, is a term that I created 5 years ago. I've been on YouTube for 5 years, and it's called taxation without representation and the mental suppression of masculinity, or the mental suppression of heteronormative masculinity. And so when you make these blanket statements, you're making innocent men that are born in this dispensation of time, Gen Z men, millennial men, and Gen X and some boomers, you're making those men pay for something they had nothing to do with. All because of what your grandmama said that she went through. All because of your grandmama fears. All because of your grandma's irrational fears. And so therefore these women, instead of them having a case, I'm going to treat a man case by case, they see all men through the lens of pathology. And then the women that support traditionalism in men. They see those women as pick-me's. They call those women pick-me's, male identified, because just like Lucifer, they want people to fall just like them. They're miserable, and they want the other women to be miserable too. There are women that want to support their men and be with their men. But like I said, there's a large percentage of black women that see themselves outside of the black collective. They see themselves as an entity unto themselves instead of seeing themselves as part of the black collective. And not only that, there are white women that way as well. White men are catching hell just like black men are catching hell. But like Tavis Smiley said, when white America get a cold, black America get the flu.
Thing, because I'm speaking to what First Lady was just saying. That these women finally got this newfound damn money that they got. Now we ain't listen to y'all. That's an excuse. That is an excuse.
But it's the truth.
No, it's not the truth. It's an excuse because the men, hold on, the black men were not making money, man. We was down bad then.
I never said the black men were making a substantial amount of money to take care of himself or a household. My argument is not that. My argument is simply they can stabilize themselves. They tend to deviate and they tend to be combative.
We agree. I agree.
And they tend to go out and do on themselves because they don't have to tolerate BS. They can have, and not only is that when you.
But once again, this narrative is tied into, and I understand what Brother Darwin is saying in theory, but they don't have to tolerate BS. And maybe just talking tongue in cheek. I don't know. But they don't have to tolerate BS. Okay, are we saying they don't have to tolerate BS because of bad associations of men in the past? But listen, a lot of men tolerate BS. A lot of men are in marriages where they are tolerating BS, but they just stay for the sake of the kids. A lot of men are being controlled by their wives in relationships. Happy wife, happy life. You know, where the woman keeps hitting him over the head, telling him to do something over and over and over again, or saying she's not going to give him intimacy unless he do whatever. That's control. It's not physical control, even though sometimes it is. It's psychological control. But we always see men through the lens of negativity. That's why you come over to get these concepts called sugar and spice, everything nice. That's what little girls are made of. We see little girls are made of something benevolent, and we see boys and men is made of something bad. And we got to stop these negative talking points, these negative tropes, because they're not conducive to healthy communication or healthy relationships.
So no fault divorce on top of it? They can just leave off of and not have.
Add something to what
I fuck with you.
As bad as it is.
But it's true.
I'm about to land, thing.
But I mean,
let him land. Let him land.
I mean,
before you go ahead, Payne. You got it. Go ahead, brother.
I'm saying you're right. I mean, if we say you're right, we understand where you're coming from. But those are the same women clamoring on social media, still pining about the same bullshit about men. Because when they find the men that they want, all the rules of any woman still, they make up their own rules. They stay with those men.
And that's true.
And like my man JT said, if those men are telling them the truth and they want that guy, they stick with that dude. Right? And all they say is be discreet with
I got you, TJ.
You know, and I'll just land it there. So you're not wrong, but let's not put these chicks on some pedestal that they are liberated. They still act based on their nature when it comes to men.
Oh,
Lord.
Can everybody else mute so out finally?
Yeah, go ahead. Everybody mute. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay.
You up next, and then TJ.
First of all, it is proven fact. It is a reason why we're called double minorities. All right? Women as a whole earn less than men. That's number one. And then when you factor in being an African-American female, we get slighted the most. We got options too now. No, we're not putting up with that. I've been married 18 years. And I best you.
Once again, this woman is talking from a trauma narrative. We got options too. Like black men back then were oppressing them and putting a yoke around their neck and they couldn't breathe. Shout out to Duke's Only and Doyless Drugstore. She said not too many black families had houses, but I'm thankful. I'm so thankful listening to these stories. It's just rare to me because my mom and dad are still together. So yeah, my parents are together for almost 60 years until my mom died last year. And so I'm from traditional two-parent black homes. So a lot of this dysfunction that people talk about, I don't recognize it either. But a lot of this, guys, once again, is predicated in, see, a lot of these women are living through these negative traumas and these negative tropes, but they also want power. So they said, we don't have to, we got options too. But ma'am, if you're a woman at a certain age, you don't have real options. You might got penis options, but you don't really have true relationship options with the man that you want to marry. Because if you really had options, then why is it that if every woman got married today, then she couldn't get a husband? If every woman got married, there would be 2 million women that would never get married. So you really don't have any options. You got DM options and penis options, but you don't have marriage options that can bring forth long-term financial stability and relationship fidelity. You don't have that. And so a lot of it, guys, goes back to what Paul talked about. Paul called it original sin. A lot of these women want power in relationships. They want power in the relationship. They have dysregulated nervous systems. And so when as a therapist, we look at things to what's called the bio, the psycho, the social, and the spiritual. But a lot of these women, guys, they want power in the relationships. See, when a woman is grounded on all levels, she's not seeking to usurp the authority of her husband. But a lot of these women are not grounded spiritually. A lot of these women literally, psychologically, and also tangibly, they practice witchcraft. This is the first generation in black excellence where you have a large proportion of white women and black women practicing witchcraft. And that's why, once again, these women are dangerous. You want a woman that's balanced spiritually. You want her to be regulated mentally, socially, and biologically. But a lot of these women are very dysregulated. And you can't have relationships with them because everything is through a trauma and a fear narrative. If a woman think a man is more dangerous than a bear, she's a fool.
Best believe my husband now going to tell me something and I'm going to stick with him. I'm not doing it. This is my second marriage.
Now listen to this woman. See, it's about power. All this stuff is about power, guys. She said that her husband is on her insurance. Like that's a flex. Not understanding in traditional cultures, whether your husband's on your insurance or not, your husband is still the leader of that home. I'm going to show you guys something in a minute. Because once again, this is one of the main reasons why guys are saying, I'm not getting married. If you're a traditional masculine man, a lot of traditional masculine men are saying, I'm not getting married. Let me show you something. If you're a traditional man looking for a wife, this is the kind of woman you need to look for. Let me show you guys something. Hold tight. Because some will get mad at me for showing you guys this. But if you're a traditional black man that's looking for a traditional woman, that's a spiritual woman that understands the assignment, I do not advise you to deal with most women in the West. Now, there's shame of women like this. I'm going to let you guys look at the comments, but look at how beautiful this woman is, but also her spirit. See, in some cultures, the woman is not celebrated at the marriage. See, in Western cultures, the women don't take the men's last names. They don't believe in honor and obey something that was standard in the marriage relationships. Many come to marriages not being virgins. Many come to marriage having kids by other men. And they want all the benefits of traditionalism, but they offer nothing traditional to most men. And so when they see stuff like this, like the term says, Western women are traumatized by this video because it exposes the version of femininity culture that was never taught to them. And I agree with this. So look at this, because they don't like women like this. But in theology said that the bride prepared herself for the bridegroom. When Jesus come back for the church got to be spotless, and the church has to be cerebral, and the church has to have oil in her lamp. But see, in our culture, the daughters are out of control. The wives are out of line. And they try to tell the men how to be men. They call themselves trying to teach the daddies and the fathers how to be men based on their fragile emotions. And if you don't do it the way they think you should do it, then you're not saved or you're not born again. And in other cultures, they don't do that. The women respect and honor, and they respect the father's leadership. Because the first commandment was to honor thy father and thy mother. Not honor thy mother and thy father, but honor thy father. And we understand that kids become grown adults, but you never stop being a person's child. Just because you're grown, you're still my adult child. Just like if you believe in the teachings of theology, you don't stop being a child of God, because God always sees angels as the sons of God. And Jesus was called the Son of Man. And then the scripture said, though we were not, but now are we the sons of God. So just because you are of a certain age, you don't stop being that person's child. My dad is 82, but he's still my dad. I'm still his son. But this is a generation where the daughters rebel against the fathers. They don't listen. And then they blame you and always point out all the bad in your life. But they'll look at everything through the lens of victimization instead of looking at the good things you did as a father. Because they have what's called confirmation bias. Because they have what's called a dysregulated ego.
I'll forever submit to you. I'll forever submit to you, Miles. I'll forever respect you, Miles. I'll forever honor you, Miles, as the head of our home.
These kind of women, guys, are not dealing with transgenerational trauma. That's why if you get you a wife, you're better off going to a traditional country. That's why I'm a passport. I believe in men getting their passports and traveling. If you can't find a traditional woman, and you ain't gonna find her like her, she's rare. But that's why I don't recommend most traditional minded masculine men getting married in America, because it's hard to find women like this. I don't believe them. I'm not all for that black love and this, marry her because she black. I don't believe in that dumbness. Some of these Negroes are not from my tribe. Just because your skin color is black, I don't associate with you because you're black. There are some men that have different skin color, and I see them more as my brother than just because somebody has black skin. Because the book said, who is my brother? He that does the will of the Father is my brother. And having consciousness supersedes skin hue. Black folks were never one in Africa. We became one because of the struggle. But this is what you need to look for. If you were a single man, or if I was a single man, I would never marry the average American woman. I'm good.
And no other. There is no other. There is no one. No plans of hell will ever prosper in our marriage, and will ever hold me not to be a wife that is a Proverbs 31 woman. Amen. I will become that woman that builds the home as I follow you, as you follow Christ. That is the only thing that we will do in our household.
And what she mean by this is if her husband is telling her to do something outside of the will of God, like being a threesome or go rob a bank, that's what I think she's referring to. But look at how beautiful and feminine and submitted and how emotional regulated she is. But some of these women in the West can never be like this beautiful woman because they have a lot of unresolved trauma for being ran through. Unresolved trauma from living vicarious through the trauma of their mothers and some of their fathers' nonsense, not being healed. And so every man they see the man as the enemy. And they miss out on good men because their mama said, their child, you need to make sure you have your own money. Instead of saying that I'm going to be self-sufficient until I can become interdependent, and hopefully my father can vet this man and give me over. But you got a generation of women now, they don't allow you to vet the man. They're rebels. They do what they want to do. They don't respect male leadership. They don't respect their fathers. But they'll call themselves Christians. They call themselves believers. They're very hypocritical because they're constantly looking at your life without looking at their life. And while a woman don't have to get her father permission, she should get her father permission, allow the father to vet the man, because men many times can see what she can't see, especially if she haven't been ran through. Women that got low body counts are more moldable than women that have been ran through. It don't mean that a woman can't be a good woman, but when you got all them different men inside your mind and in your body and your spirit, it's hard to be grounded. A lot of women are not emotionally regulated. They don't have the propensity to be a wife.
And I promise and I vow that in heaven they hear. On earth I declare and decree, I shall be a submissive wife unto you. As we continue to do this work of God, I'll forever.
And if you did, you're not gonna find that. You won't find that in America, guys. That's gonna be hard to find. Notice she said respect, not love, right? Look at what the guys are saying. Till you find a woman like her, don't sell her, guys. And that's why I'm telling you, man, you will be a fool if you're a single man to deal with the average Western woman. You will be a fool because you're not going to get that. You're not going to get it. I see it all the time in couples therapy. I work with famous people too. And you'll be surprised the stories rich and poor and famous tell me in these modern relationships.
Got options too. And I'm not trying to brag, but in reality, because he's a pastor, guess who's the dependent on my insurance? My husband is the dependent, not me. I'm not the dependent.
Look at her trying to flex. look at her trying to flex. right, James Turner, own her insurance. Betty owns a house and apartment. Right, own her own right. And that's my point, James Turner. Listen, there was a woman, James Turner, you should know because you lived in Africa for a while, off and on. She was a billionaire Nigerian tycoon woman. She was a billionaire. But she said, just because I'm a billionaire, it does not supersede my responsibility with my husband. But modern women always sell their social market value, and they falsely equivocate that to how a man should respond to them. I don't care if you got $1 trillion. It does not supersede that man's responsibility, him being the leader in that relationship.
When I would go into the facilities and they would be like, oh, well, who's the service member? I'm the service member. My husband was the dependent. Now that I'm an educator, he's still my dependent because most churches don't pay for the insurance. Despite the myths about people be having the TDJ lifestyles, no. So no, we're not tolerating it. Yes, we do make less money still, but we have our own money. And I make sure that I spend wisely. So if anything ever falls through, my grandmother taught me that. You said.
Listen to what she said. My grandmama taught me that. But if she had a father that taught her how to vet a man properly, and if she had a father that taught her that you should be self-sufficient until you get your husband, because it's not that you should be independent. You're supposed to be self-sufficient with your husband. But a lot of these women are not coming in being self-sufficient. They're coming in from a victim mindset and a victim narrative that's often tied into the color purple. It's always about seeing the man as dangerous, the man being hostile, the man being highly volatile.
Oh, was people doing that back then? Yes, my grandmother preached that nonstop about make your own. My mom preached that. Why? Because when you say, when did this happen? I lived through it as a child. And I witnessed some things, and that my mom personally told me from her mouth, things that she tolerated because he was the breadwinner. And she felt like that she couldn't make some things on her own. But times have changed now.
But what this woman don't understand, there are men and women that have power now and they abuse that power. There are women, a lot of women now that say, just because you're the leader, I make more money. They'll say, just because I make more money, you can't tell me what to do. So these negative talking points are no different than what they accuse the average man of, because the average man don't have money and power like that. And so if you're getting with men where you can't be vulnerable and be yourself, then ma'am, you don't need to be married. You just need to stay single. Just stay single, because you're supposed to be following that man's leadership and being under his leadership. That's why they said honor and obey back then. Like the Marines said, semper fidelis, truth and service. But you don't get that now in modern women. You don't get it at all.
Times have changed. And we have to come to reality that we are more educated now. We do have the ability to stand.
Ma'am, your education has nothing to do with your submission and your respect of your husband. Once again, they always leading with education because education symbolizes power. There are educated women that understand that just because I got my doctorate and my master's and my bachelor's, that does not supersede my responsibility to submit to my husband. And that's why I'm telling you, men, if you're dealing with women like this, don't even marry them. Let them marry themselves. Find you a woman that's going to follow your program. Make sure you're healthy. Make sure you're right. And make sure you're fair. But don't get with women like this because they're dangerous.
And alone and complete our households by ourselves. So no, we're not tolerating that. So please don't get that myth out there. And I hope you're not. telling nobody else that because we're not tolerating it.
Of course y'all are. Some women ain't, but yes, y'all are. But I'm sorry. I mean, I hear you, and you're making sense. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying you're acting universal, like there's some revelation. Men are men, women are women, and the way we deal with each other transcends time. And women have changed. I grant you that. And you don't want men to be under your control. That's why you made it a point.
He hit it right on the head. They want men to be under their control now. That's what this occultic feminism is. Occultic feminism is really Luciferianism. And they want men to be under their control. They want the man to serve them and do what they say. Why do you think so many women say happy wife, happy life? Because they want the man to be under their control. They claim victim, but in actuality, the man is the victim.
That makes them stick.
Amen.
Right?
That's where
I'm just trying to tell you that, you know, the truth of the matter is when a woman finds the guy they want, I don't give a shit how much money they make. They tolerate whatever they have to keep that dude. And if he's telling the truth, like what JT said, then it's a lot easier because he's not lying to her. And she has a choice to make. Like you said, women have a choice to make, but they still making this.
We need to dead the income conversation about black men and black women. Yeah. We need to completely dead it. And every time we hear another black woman talk about how much money she's making.
And shout out to my man TJ, because TJ is correct. Real Bravado Network. They always talking about that they make more money than black men, and they don't make more money than black men on average. Are there some women with higher education that make more money than black men? Yes, that's true. But that's not the average. The average woman makes less money than a man. But see, they do that, guys, because it's a power flex. It's a power flex. That's why they do it.
We're black men. If we don't dead that at its inception, because that is one of the most false statements that can ever be put out. With I just pulled up the 2025. We just finished 2025 from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Black men earn, on average, we're not talking about people's individual, because I make more than that. We're talking about as a group, as a whole, the majority of black men only earn $55,000 a year. The majority of black women only earn $46,000 a year. Ain't no black man, ain't no black woman in 2026 running a whole house by themselves. It ain't happening. I'm talking about I'm not talking about your individual situation. I'm just talking about we are as a group. Let me point out one other thing, because this is why I'm so sick of this fucking income conversation. The white medium household income in 2025 is $89,000 a year. That is based on a two-person income. There is no black medium household income because they base black household income off of the fucking black woman, because there are no black family households.
Wouldn't concede to that because they make this, they paint this thing where the men were just that the men. I'm sorry, Saint, but I'm gonna just say this. They paint this thing where the men was just treating women all bad.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's crazy to me. That's not what it was, and it did go to the point of survivalists. At the end of the day, it does change. Because when you were trying to compare those days back then to the days now, you can't compare them now because we are lost. Women are lost. And guess who else is lost? Their children are lost because there's nobody to teach the children how to become conducive adults.
All right, man. Appreciate you, TJ. Anissa and then DL Sanko. Go ahead, Anissa. She's been waiting patiently.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to go back to the conversation was I looked at the average.
And so then, shout out to this. Look at her trying to prove her point. See what they're doing. They're shaping their argument and conflating the argument based on trauma narratives. Of course, black women back then didn't make as much money as white women because black men and black women were discriminated against. But my point would be, what's your point? You keep falsely assuming or trying to compare yourself to white women, not understanding that white women have more privilege than black women back then, in general. And it's dangerous because it shows you that sadly many don't have any loyalty. They don't have no loyalty to nothing but their feelings. They don't have any loyalty to the black collective or black families. They only have loyalty to their feelings. And that's why you men got to start being loyal to your feelings. That's why you men got to be like Jaheim said, you got to charge it to the game. Shout out to the 18 folks that voted our irrational fears about males and leadership destroying relationships. You got to charge it to the game, guys. Share the stream, guys, for me, please. Share the stream, please. Share the stream. And then I'm going to show you guys the second half of the conversation. Share the stream.
Data from the 1940s, and white women earned annually $827 a year. Black women earned $327 a year. So women, period, absolutely stayed in situations that may not have been the best situations for survival. Absolutely. They were not making the money in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s.
But you don't think men are staying in situations for the sake of survival, and they want to leave these bad relationships where the women are disrespectful. They don't nurture the relationship. They're disobedient. You don't think men want to leave these bad relationships too? See, only in other countries, they don't have the problems that we have because the women, they respect their men and they need their men. But modern women have become so emboldened and drunk with power that they just see men as options now. And they're judging men based on things that men never did to them unanimously.
Carry a household on their own, especially if you had 5, 6, 8, 10 kids. Where were you going and you made $300 a year? Okay, those women had to stay for survival. But as time went on, what I can say for myself is my parents raised me to never be in a position. Never put yourself in a position where you have to. There's a difference between wanting to stay in a situation and you have to stay in a situation. And my parents never wanted me to be in a position where I had to stay in a situation that wasn't a good situation for me simply because I could not take care of myself. And I've never been in a situation where I had to put up with somebody else's mess to have a roof over my head. And I don't think any woman should be in that predicament. And that's the difference that women compared to the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and compared today to today. So, I can live a whole lifestyle by myself before I will allow someone to mistreat me.
That's a trauma response, guy. That is a trauma response because you can't compare women back then to women now because women back then were superior to women now. And women now not necessarily on average going to what women went back then. But men back then were not all bad. But that's the minimization of masculinity that I'm talking about, guys. And you don't want to get in no relationship like that. I'm gonna show you guys something. Because this is what really happened. There was only 10% of divorces back in 1960. Most women back then were virgins that had no kids and they were wife ready. Now look at the difference between women back then when they had less versus women now. But they always see relationships through the lens of negativity. Hold tight. I'm going to show it to you guys in a minute. Hit the like button, guys. Hold tight.
That you've made a determination that you'd rather pick bear over man. I guess what percentage of men do you think would be inclined to victimize you in that way?
Let me show you guys this part. All right, let's get into this. And the title of this video is Why Black Men Stayed Married in the 1960s, the secret that was lost. Now, a lot of women like Anissa and a lot of women in general, like the other woman, they take their own anecdotal responses and falsely equivocate all men as being bad. But the difference between those true God-fearing women back then is that they were superior to women now. Women back then were superior to women now. They were superior. They were couth. They were godly women. They won't ran through. and they respected their husbands and they respected the family. But women now are not like that. So once again, guys, women back then were superior. The black women back then were superior to the women now.
Fall comes to us in its own time. Fighters keepers, losers we.
Barely 1 in 10 black marriages ended in divorce. Today, it is over half. The official story blames lost values or changing times, but hidden.
And if you notice, guys, there's a stark correlation between the Lyndon B. Johnson administration after the 60s or before the 60s, where black families and white families and families in general were intact, compared to families now. 50% are complicit in divorce. And the comparative analysis that you see is that after the Lyndon B. Johnson administration and free love and black folks getting into bed with these white radical liberals, and some of the white conservative women getting into bed with white liberals and being rebellious, because that's all it was rebellion against leadership, especially white male leadership. That's when you begin to see marriage rates decline. And that's why they are still declining. And that's why men are checking out. And that's why men are saying, I'm not getting married again, because it's witchcraft. I'm telling you, it's witchcraft. I'm not saying that hyperbolically, it's witchcraft.
Beneath the surface was a web of economic necessity, brutal wage gaps, and survival math that made leaving almost impossible. So what secret did families in the 1960s know? And what really happened to the force that once held black marriages together? A black man clocking in at the auto plant in Detroit or the steel mill in Chicago in 1960 could expect to earn just over half the paycheck of his white coworker, about $4,000 a year if he was lucky enough.
And that's what they don't tell you. See, some of these black women that got these trauma narratives act as if black men were making money equal with their white counterparts, and they weren't. White women weren't making money. I mean, black women weren't making money, and neither were black men. But what we did have was love, and we supported one another. And there were some black men that were in trauma back then. But like Tavis Malley said, when white America get a cold, black America get the flu. And they were traumatized. They weren't making money. But they have this false equivocation that black men were at the same level as white men back then. Now understand that the policies and the systemic racism that was going on.
Enough to get steady hours. That number might sound decent on paper, but the reality was stark. Rent for a modest apartment could swallow $100 every month, and groceries for a family of 4 easily ate up the rest. Alone, his paycheck could not keep the lights on, let alone cover emergencies.
And that's what these women don't understand that bugs me so much. A lot of black men back then, if they were abusive, they were under a lot of pressure. They were under trauma a lot of times. It wasn't because they were just bad men. They were dealing with Jim Crow racism. And sometimes they brought that trauma home. And sometimes those women, some of them, not all, some didn't feel secure because they thought white women had more power. And many times they would look their nose down on their black men. But the black men didn't have any power either. And the women that were wise, they worked with their men and they built black excellence. But there were some that wanted to be like Miss Cartwright. And the good black men had to suffer because of that. Some are still suffering because of that. Because there are black men that say that when black women get around certain white men, they act totally different. Because it's about perceived power, and some of it's about internalized hate.
Save for the future. So his wife worked too. Nearly half of all black women were in the labor force, a rate far higher than their white counterparts. For many, this meant cleaning houses, scrubbing floors, ironing shirts, or cooking for white families across town. Domestic work paid little, around $2,000 a year on average, but it was steady and it mattered. In some cities, black women made up more than 60% of the domestic workforce. Their earnings were not.
Let me read this comment real quick. I think it's very, James said that, James Joseph Olo Wajoba said that most American women don't respect their husbands. I'm glad how the man referenced a Nigerian richest woman, yes, sir, for Floruncio Alkija and Ojo Okonjo Iweala respect their husband, and their husbands has control. Right. I agree with you 100%, Joseph. And that's why I tell men never marry American women. The average American woman. Are there some good women that are uncovered gems and diamonds in the rough? Yes, there are some good women that are uncovered gems and they're diamonds in the rough. There are some good women. But on average, they're hard to find, man. And I agree with you 100%, Joseph. That's why I tell men, if you want to get a wife, you need to get your passport and get you a foreign wife, properly vet her, make sure she comes from a traditional family. But don't marry American women. On average, there are some good American women, but if you can't find a good one, that's what you need to do. Because I do want my daughters to get married. They're good American women, but on average, they're hard to find.
Extra. They were essential. Together, a factory worker and a domestic could just about reach $6,000 a year, enough to scrape by in places like Detroit, Chicago, or New York. There was no cushion. Every dollar was spoken for before it arrived. In the South, the numbers looked even bleaker. Black men working as farmhands or laborers might bring home $2,500 if the crops were good and the boss was fair. Their wives, often working for less than $1 an hour.
Now look at this, guys. Look at this. But those same women were working the field alongside with their husbands many times. They would go home and cook, and they were still feminine women, and they still didn't say, I can't be feminine because I can't rest in my femininity because I got to work. And they assumed that women back then didn't work. Women back then did work, and men worked. Men would work up. My daddy told me men back then were working from sun up to sundown with women. They worked from sun up to sundown. And they were still better women, and they were more grateful, and they still cooked 3 meals a day sometimes or whenever they could, and they took care of their families. And that's why I tell men I would never marry an American woman if I was a single man. And neither should you.
Still had to contribute. In these households, 2 incomes meant survival. 1 income meant hunger. Census tables from the era tell the story in numbers, but the reality played out in kitchen table calculations and late night worry. An elder in Detroit remembered that her check and mine kept the lights on and that we fought the world together. The lights stayed on because both paychecks mattered. For Black families, there was no fantasy of a breadwinner who could shoulder it all. Systemic discrimination made sure of that. Even union jobs, which promised stability, rarely paid Black men as much as whites. And layoffs hit Black workers first. Overtime was rationed. Promotions were rare. It was not just about pride, it was about math. Divorce was not just a heartbreak, it was a financial cliff. If a marriage broke, both sides risked falling into poverty. A man could not afford a room of his own on a single paycheck. A woman with children faced impossible odds. This was economic pressure as reality. This economic pressure forced a kind of partnership. Both spouses knew their roles and their value. Pay stubs were compared, budget set, and every expense was a team effort. Love mattered, but necessity ruled. 2 paychecks were not a luxury. They were the only way to survive. Household budgets in the 1960s in Black America left no room for error. A typical family of 4 in an urban center needed about $6,000 a year to stay afloat.
Now, think about this, guys. Think about the pressure that a lot of Black men back then were going through. And understanding that when they talk about patriarchy, where Black men never had a pure patriarchy. I would say the average white man has never had a pure patriarchy. But all this propaganda has been taught to women in school that's made them delusional based on reality.
That covered rent, groceries, utilities, and little else. With a factory worker's annual wages hovering near $4,000 and his wife's domestic work adding around $2,000, the numbers barely lined up. Every expense was scrutinized. Rent alone could take $1,200 a year. Food bills ate up another $1,800. The rest, clothing, heat, bus fare, doctor visits, had to be stretched from what remained. There was no margin for medical emergencies or a broken furnace. A blown tire or an unexpected hospital bill could mean borrowing from neighbors or going without. The math of survival was unforgiving. If a marriage split, the budget collapsed. A man trying to rent a room alone faced prices that devoured half his paycheck, leaving little for meals or clothes. Boarding houses were crowded and sometimes refused black tenants outright. For a woman, the picture was even grimmer. With only her earnings, often less than a third of the family's total, she could not cover rent, food, and childcare. Public assistance was limited, and jobs for single mothers were scarce. The threat of eviction or hunger was real. Separation did not just mean heartbreak, it meant financial ruin. Ledgers from the era, where they survive, show columns penciled in beside each other. His weight.
How many of you guys think things were better back then overall because we were more structured and we had family? If you believe that, hit 1.
Wages, her wages, rent, groceries, utilities, church dues. Every dollar was double counted. Couples argued over grocery lists, not luxuries. A missed paycheck could mean lights out. In these circumstances, divorce was not just a personal decision. It was an economic gamble with the odds stacked against you. The penalty for leaving was immediate and severe: poverty, instability, and sometimes homelessness. This financial trap shaped daily life. Children learned early not to ask for extras. Parents took pride in making ends meet together. Survival required teamwork, not just affection. The economic stakes of separation made marriage less about romance and more about joint survival. For many, the fear of falling through the cracks kept families together through storms that might have shattered them otherwise. Yet as tight as the numbers were, the financial ledger was only one side of the equation. Beyond the kitchen table, another force waited to enforce the rules. The watchful eyes of neighbors, friends, and elders who believed marriage was a community matter. On any given evening in a 1960s black neighborhood, the front porch was more than a place to cool off after work. It was the community's watchtower. Elders sat outside, shelling peas.
And the thing that people had back then was family. We had community. We had faith. And all this, guys, I think, was planned social engineer to not only destroy America, but also especially the black family. And the new generation don't understand what we had. They'll never understand it. They've never seen it, and they'll never understand it.
Fanning themselves, but their eyes missed nothing. A man who came home late, or a woman seen arguing on the sidewalk, would find their business discussed before the sun set. News moved quickly from the barbershop to the corner store, carried in whispers and knowing glances. Reputation was currency, and everyone's marriage was public property. If a husband strayed, the grapevine snapped into action. By the time he walked in the door, his wife already knew, and so did her mother, her best friend, and 3 neighbors. A woman thinking of leaving might wake up to a knock from her aunt or the church mother, ready to talk her down. The barbershop doubled as a court of opinion. A man who abandoned his family faced a silent chair, a cold shoulder, or worse, total exile from the only world he knew. One wrong move, and the entire block could turn its back. Children of separated parents were pitied, sometimes teased, and their mothers watched for signs of struggle. A composite memory from a neighborhood matriarch captures it. We didn't need no police. If a man tried to run off, the block would find him. If a woman was hurting, we brought her dinner and sat with her until she...
And see, back then you had what was called behavior reinforcement, where the community reinforced good behavior and they shamed bad behavior. A lot of people now say that shame is bad, but no, it's not. There's a difference between healthy shame and unhealthy shame. Healthy shame shows you the errors of your ways and teaches you to autocorrect so that you can become a better person. The Bible talks about shame in the scripture. But unhealthy shame is when people use coercion and manipulation to get something from you. When people, anytime you hear a woman say a real man, run.
She calmed down. Folks might fuss, but we didn't let families fall apart easy. This network of eyes and voices didn't just spread gossip, it enforced the rules. Couples were rarely left alone with their troubles. Neighbors stepped in to mediate arguments or sent word to relatives when things got out of hand. Public shame was a real consequence. A man who failed his family risked losing more than respect. He lost his place. For many, the fear of being ostracized by the neighborhood was more powerful than any legal or financial penalty. In this world, marriage wasn't just a private contract, it was a public trust, guarded by everyone on the block. Divorce in the 1960s was not just a matter of heartbreak or pride. For Black couples, the law itself made separation nearly impossible. Most states demanded proof of wrongdoing, adultery, abandonment, or cruelty before a judge would grant a divorce. That meant hiring a lawyer, gathering witnesses, and sometimes putting private pain on public display. Legal fees alone could wipe out a family's savings. For many, the process dragged on for months or even years. If a woman wanted out...
So it seems like now that, a lot of women have been given power. They've been given power, and instead of using the power to continue to build, they use that power, white women and Black women, to oppress their men. Some of them, not all, but some.
She had to prove her husband's guilt in court, and the burden of evidence was heavy. Men faced similar hurdles. Even when both sides agreed it was over, the law refused to let go without a fight. But legal barriers were only the start. The search for a new place to live brought its own set of locked doors. Redlining, the practice of denying loans or rentals to Black families, mapped entire neighborhoods as off-limits. Banks refused mortgages in Black areas, and landlords turned away single mothers, fearing they would fall behind on rent. Public housing was scarce, and waiting lists stretched for years. Boarding houses sometimes posted signs, "No children, no colored." A composite story from Birmingham brings these facts to life. A woman, tired of years of arguing, packed her bags and left. First, she tried her sister's apartment, already crowded with 3 kids and a cousin on the couch. Next, she looked for a room in a nearby boarding house, but the landlady shook her head. No single women, especially not with children. Finally, she went to the city housing office, only to find that her neighborhood was marked in red on the map. No vacancies, no help. With nowhere else to go, she returned home. The exit door was not just closed, it was nailed shut. Even for those who managed to move out, the price was steep. A man renting a room alone paid nearly half his paycheck just for a bed.
Do you guys see things going back to the way that it was back then? Do y'all see things going back to the way that it was back then? And yet, and you're right, Phil, they were stuck together, but that's not necessarily a bad thing in my opinion. You're right, they were stuck together. But they were forced to love one another and work together. But this false trope that all Black men had all this money, had all this power. Black men that have no money, like I said, they were muse. Men and women, Black men and Black women at that time, both were muse. They had no other choice but to stay together, both. They both needed one another. The woman more so than the man.
A woman with children faced landlords who demanded double deposits or refused to rent at all. Shelters for victims of domestic violence barely existed. Family might offer a couch, but with so many households already stretched thin, space was a luxury. These formal barriers did more than just trap unhappy couples. They forced people to weigh every decision against the risk of deeper poverty and homelessness. For some, the law and the housing market acted as a kind of marriage counselor, keeping families together simply because the alternative was unlivable. Inside the walls of the Black church in the 1960s, marriage was more than a personal promise. It was a sacred duty. Pastors stood in the pulpit, and called divorce a sin, warning that breaking the marital vow was not just a failure between two people, but a rupture with God and the entire congregation. Church records from Atlanta and Chicago document elders and deacons gathering troubled couples for prayer and counsel, sometimes quoting scripture, sometimes speaking plain truth. One common refrain was, "Satan divides, reconcile for God's glory." Minutes from AME and Zion church meetings in the era show reconciliation rates topping 80% after these interventions. For many, the church was the anchor of community life.
But you don't have that no more.
Joys and struggles, brutal wage gaps.
You don't have that anymore because sadly, a lot of churches now, they don't tell the women the truth. They tell them what they want to hear. The pastors are incentivized to lie to the women instead of telling them the truth.
Rigid. Deviation brought whispers, sometimes outright rebuke. A man who failed to provide lost standing. A woman who questioned her husband's authority was labeled difficult. The structure was confining.
Listen to what they said. Listen to what he just said. A woman that questioned her husband's authority was seen as something something negative. How many women, guys, do y'all know now that always question their husband's authority? These women, most women in the West, white or black, they're not ready to be wives, guys, because many of them question their husband's authority. They don't respect it. They question his authority.
I'd lost standing. A woman who questioned her husband's authority was labeled difficult. The structure was confining, especially for women who had little say in church decisions or family finances. But for many, it offered clarity, a set of rules everyone understood. The church's moral code, backed by tradition and reinforced each Sunday, created a framework that kept families together, for better or worse. This spiritual scaffolding was the last line of defense before a marriage reached the breaking point. It was not always gentle, and it did not always serve justice, but it added a layer of pressure and support that modern relationships rarely encounter. In that world, marriage was not just a private journey, but a public covenant, shaped as much by faith and duty as by love. Shared struggle built a kind of closeness that numbers and ledgers cannot capture. Couples who weathered layoffs, discrimination, and empty cupboards together often describe a partnership that felt unbreakable. One elder from Chicago remembers coming home after a long shift at the factory, his wife already up from her cleaning job, both too tired to talk but still sitting side by side at the kitchen table, counting out what little they had. There was no room for secrets or pride, just two people fighting the same fight, day after day.
And that was my point always. They were working together. They didn't see themselves as having an agenda outside of their husbands. But when we get these tired talking points that men control the money, the women that have no money, and the women were woe is me, it creates trauma narratives that's not based in reality. And that's why I said so many modern women are dangerous, because that it's always through a lens of victimization and victimhood.
A grandmother from Birmingham recalls that they did not have much, but they had each other. When the world was hard, they held on tighter. For many, love was not just a feeling, but an action. A daily choice to show up, to share burdens, to find laughter in small victories. Evenings meant swapping stories, patching clothes, and planning for tomorrow. Children watched their parents work as a team, learning resilience by example. These survival bonds did not erase hardship, but they made it bearable. The pride in having made it through together still shines in the voices of elders who remember those years, not as a time of ease, but as proof of what partnership can endure. By the early 1970s, the foundation that had once held black marriages together began to crack. Factories that once offered steady work in cities like Detroit and Chicago started closing their doors.
Did you guys hear what I said? How things began to change precipitously after the mid-60s to after the 70s? A lot of things impacted black excellence in the black family. And then came the crack epidemic back in the 80s. But it was starting to go on. It was starting to go on as early as some in the 60s. And now we have nothing nowhere near it. Not just black, but this white or black America. We don't have it anymore.
Manufacturing jobs disappeared. And with them went the paychecks that had made two adult households a necessity. At the same time, new laws swept the country. No-fault divorce became legal in California in 1969 and spread nationwide within a decade. Couples no longer needed to prove wrongdoing to end a marriage. The process became simpler, faster, and less expensive.
And ever since no-fault divorce came into fruition, relationships have been crumbling, marriages have been crumbling, families have been disintegrated for black families and white families. The American fabric is under attack. Societal infrastructures are destroyed, and men no longer have power in their homes to be fathers. Men will be a fool to get married once again in America, not because men don't want to get married, But getting married in America is dangerous because the infrastructure does not support traditional heteronormative marriages. Imagine getting married to a woman and she can dictate to you and control you, and then dare you not to go outside of the marriage to take care of your needs. Or you get with women that have lied about how many men they've been with, trick you into a relationship, and then expect you to be loyal. Or a woman that traps you into a relationship and you become a victim of paternity fraud.
As Black women gained access to better jobs in offices, schools, and hospitals, financial survival no longer demanded marriage. Independence became possible for the first time. Community ties loosened as families moved for work or left old neighborhoods behind. The church's influence faded, and the old rules lost their grip. What was gained was real. Freedom to leave harmful relationships and freedom to define happiness on new terms. But something else slipped away. The safety net of shared struggle, the accountability of neighbors, the clarity of purpose, that happiness on new terms.
I like what he's saying, freedom versus scaffolding. They got the freedom, they got everything they want, and they got freedom, they got money, they got power, they got homes, they got cars, but they forgot human connectivity. When Black men and Black women and white America and men and women in general were scaffolding, they were building, and it was through the commonality of the struggle that made them become one. Sometimes when you struggle together as a couple, I'm not saying that I advocate for struggle love, but if you're working together and working as a team, you're trying to build an empire, it makes you love that marriage even more. But the freedom got women that are on psychotropic medication, unmarried, ran through, multiple deletions, no husband, entitled, delusional, and shaming traditional women that want to do the right thing.
But something else slipped away. The safety net of shared struggle.
Right, the safety net of shared struggle, but also community. Let me tell you men something, and to the women that are listening, you can have all the money that you want, but at the end of the day, it's nothing like family and community. It's not like community. Community and family is the glue that keep people together. It's nothing like community. And that's what was lost. The power and the impact of community, that's what was lost. You got a lot of women there that got nice cars and they got nice homes and they're miserable. But jobs vanish, safety nets fray, no fault divorce opens exit door, Black women gain paychecks and choice, and they utilizing that choice, but they're utilizing that choice under the umbrella that they en masse, like all Black women were tarnished and they didn't have a voice and you know they just have no power. But their greatest power was their femininity and their abiding love for their family. A lot of women they're gonna be some men that's gonna die alone, but there's gonna be a lot of women that are gonna die alone. They're gonna have that nice car and that degree on the wall, but they're gonna be sad. They're gonna be miserable, and they're gonna be highly distorted. And sadly, many of them can blame nobody but themselves.
The accountability of neighbors, the clarity of purpose that once made marriage feel essential.
And let me tell you something, guys. This is talking about North Carolina, Craven. It's Craven County. There's a county in North Carolina called Craven County. But there were a lot of Black men in the South back then that would go to school, would allow their wives to go to school while they worked on the farm. Sometimes they would put their education aside for the sake of the family. But they don't talk about that. Anytime most modern women talk about Black men, it's always through the lens of pathology and victimhood. They'll never tell you 10 good things that Black men did back then. It's always through the lens of granddaddy was mean, granddaddy took all the money, grandmama didn't have no money, she stayed and she was miserable. It's always through the lens of pathology. And I'm so grateful and honored that I had the opportunity to live in a time where I did see my dad struggle. But I also grew up in a family where my mom and dad were together for almost 60 years until last year. And that this generation would never experience what I experienced. I've always said that Gen X was the last normal generation.
The trade-off is still felt in every household, every choice, every generation since. Today, only 1 in 3 Black adults is married. It is a transformation shaped by freedom, but also by the erosion of communal bonds that once made partnership essential. As individual choice expands, so does isolation. The test now is not how to return to the past, but whether we can create new forms of support that honor both independence and connection. The future of Black families depends on what we choose to rebuild. Share your thoughts.
Well, there should never be any independence. There should be always interdependence. And there's too much selfishness that's destroying relationships. But anyway, guys, we're going to end this in a minute. Thank you guys for tuning in. This was a good breakdown. Shout out to the Art of Will. He said that we have not seen lonely women like what we're about to see with millennial women 30, millennial women early 30, millennial women 30s, early 40. It would be a sad thing to witness. Let me tell you something, Art of Will. I'm glad you said that, man. I ain't going to call the person's name, but I know a woman. And she was a classmate of mine. And you can tell, man, you know, she's not married. And I don't know if she got factious disorder or Munchausen by proxy. I don't know. But she's a single woman. She don't, you know, she got kids, but she don't have a man. And it's like she's always feigning for attention. You got a lot of women now. Well, a lot of these women don't understand, freedom they gave them their freedom, but a woman, once she gets a certain age, she's invisible. Once women start getting in their 40s and their mid 40s and early 50s, most of them are invisible to men. They have options and money. They don't get the same kind of love that younger women get. And it's sad, but also at the same time, it's pathetic that she's trying to, she's feigning for love and attention. But anyway, guys, this was a good show. This is why dating feels dangerous. Shout out to the #1 sponsor, Quiet Faith, for that $50 super chat. Very generous. Shout out to my brother Ray Johnson. Shout out to James Turner for showing love on today, guys. And guys, we're gonna end this stream. I think I'll be back tomorrow with another stream, guys. And thank you guys for tuning in. So once again, guys, this is where we're at. This is where we're going, and I don't see it going back. So guys, thank you for tuning in. And remember that in modern times, truth is always stranger than fiction. And if it ain't severed, it ain't kosher. And if it ain't kosher, guys, it ain't right. So, guys, we're signing off. And I'll see you guys on tomorrow.
Thrive. When women have irrational fears about masculinity and leadership, is there evidence that Black men had the power to oppress women at all levels of governance? Have the man versus bear argument been based in projection of irrational fear because they want power?
I wouldn't concede to that because they make this, they paint this thing where the men are just that the men. I'm sorry, Saint, but I'm gonna just say this. They paint this thing where the man was just treating women all bad.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's crazy to me. That's not what it was, and it did go to the point of survivalism. At the end of the day, it does change. Because when you're trying to compare those days back then to the days now, you can't compare them now because we are lost. Women are lost. And guess who else is lost? Their children are lost because there's nobody to teach the children how to become conducive adults.
Being able to make wages and secure individual stability. So now that you're able to do that, you can leave without the blink, whenever you feel like you mistreated, you're gone. And what she's exposed me something that I discovered this year. These are things that I've been discovering, man. I'm discovering a whole bunch of stuff. I had a mental block in front of me. I had an ideological block that wasn't allowing me to see other sides of this argument. And once I start tapping to it, I started understanding it. It is true that the reason why a lot of these women are eager to leave is because they do not have to rely on you for financial stability.
I disagree.
Where did that? So let me ask you this then: where did that evolve from? From how many years that was? Give me the time a year where there was times when women just wasn't making money and man was making all the women. And I'm gonna say this specifically, Black men, where women were broke as hell and they had to stay with a man because the women wasn't making no damn money. Give me the time frame that was.
I can go as early as the 80s.
Nope.
Early.
Let me tell you something. Hold on. Let me tell you something.
Hey, Nick, you got to mute. You got to mute. I'm gonna let you. Cause your background loud. Nick. When he gets
you don't
done,
have to agree with it, but
because I lived in that time frame.
The 20s, the 30s,
okay, so
40s,
if you did the
50s, the 60s.
Hold on.
You ain't even got to go that far back.
Hold on.
If you look at the wage gap,
you guys don't know what the hell y'all talking about.
Where did that? So let me ask you this then: where did that evolve from? From how many years that was? Give me the time a year where there was times when women just wasn't making money and man was making all the women. And I'm gonna say this specifically, black men, where women were broke as hell and they had to stay with a man because the women wasn't making no damn money. Give me the time frame that was.
I can go as early as the 80s.
No,
early.
Let me tell you something. Hold on. Let me tell you something.
Hey, Nick, you got to mute. You got to mute. I'm gonna let you. Cause your background loud. Nick. When he gets
you don't
done,
have to agree with it, but
because I lived in that time frame.
The 20s, the 30s,
okay, so
40s,
if you did the
50s, the 60s.
No, hold on.
You ain't even got to go that far back.
Hold on.
If you look at the wage gap,
you guys don't know what the hell y'all talking about.
We're talking about black women.
We do know what we grew up during that time. We do know.
I didn't grow up. I'm 67 years old. You guys don't know what the hell.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
The 80s?
Our grandmothers are older than you are, Payne. Our grandmothers are in their 80s and 90s. They're older than you, so they do know. So they do know. They were there.
The same amount of money as their husbands. And the husbands had to work 16 to 20 hours a fucking week to make the money. But the women made money. Women make a choice to stay with
they did not make enough money to carry a household on their own. They did not.
One mic, guys. One mic.
In the 30s,
I wasn't back there. I was. Y'all just talking shit from memory. We want to go back to slavery and all that other bullshit.
So you're saying a woman in the 1930s and 40s made enough money to carry a household and 8 children on her own without a husband. Is that what you're saying?
If he's the right guy.
Because you know that's a lie.
No, they did not.
That's a lie.
Michael Jordan coming out of the 80s up into the 90s, I think, middle of second, third wave.
If you had 5, 6, 8.
that the men. I'm sorry, Saint, but I'm gonna just say this. They paint this thing where the men was just treating women all bad.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's crazy to me. That's not what it was, and it did go to the point of survivalists. At the end of the day, it does change, because when you were trying to compare those days back then to the days now, you can't compare them now because we are lost. Women are lost. And guess who else is lost? Their children are lost because there's nobody to teach the children how to become conducive adults.
Is there a concern about, well, in the instance where either the bear or the man is aggressive, yes, the bear will kill you, but the man could do worse? Is that kind of also a component?
Yeah, I would rather be slaughtered than raped, so.
Gotcha, yeah. And I think that that's a fair conclusion. Yeah. In terms of how you want to go out, I don't object to that. I guess my confusion here a little bit is the risk profile of a given encounter with a bear versus a given encounter with a man. So given that you've made a determination that you'd rather pick bear over man, I guess what percentage of men do you think would be inclined to victimize you in that way?
Left him court.
When men fail to lead, the children rebel and the women take over.
Hit that like button. Go ahead, do it now before I reach out into that screen and twist your hand like Aunt Esther. Hit the like button. Thank you.
Destroy.